Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is the Science Dispatch podcast. My name is Cameron English, joined as always by Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein. Chuck, very good to see you. How's it going?
It's going great, and I see we have a guest today, which is very exciting.
We sure do. We're joined by Professor Edward Friedman. He's the author of this book. Let me see if I can get it on the screen here. There it is.
You got it.
There it is. Nuclear Energy, Boom, Bust, and Emerging Renaissance. Sorry, I can't read backwards. It's a great book. I just started making my way through it, published by Oxford University Press, which is quite an accomplishment. Really good stuff. I think this would be the kind of book that I'd love every American to read.
That's the intention.
Yeah. It's an important topic. But just a little bit of background on you. So we were just talking, Professor Emeritus at the Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey, degrees from Columbia. So you know what you're talking about, I dare say. You've been doing this for a long time. So just before we started to record, you were telling us the genesis of this book, where it came from. It actually goes back quite a while. It took you a couple years to write the book, but the story starts several decades earlier. So maybe tell us about that.
Well, the background to this is that I became an emeritus professor at Stevens in 2007. And I sat down to think about what should I do? Now that I'm an emeritus professor, I can do whatever I want. And I reflected on my career, which is quite varied. My thoughts went back to my early days as a graduate student at Columbia in 1961, 1962, when Con Edison, the power company of the New York area, was proposing to build the world's largest nuclear power plant on the banks of the East River opposite Midtown Manhattan, which was a mind-boggling idea. And it confused the hell out of the population of New York. And it aroused faculty and graduate students from the New York metropolitan area who had some knowledge in this domain to form a group to provide objective information to the public to help them work their way through the decision-making process as citizens. And I became one of the most active speakers talking to Rotary clubs, Democratic political clubs, Republican clubs, and it was a very satisfying experience. Con Edison eventually backed down, but we wound up staying in business because JFK at that time wanted people to build fallout shelters. And so we were devoting ourselves to that information activity as well. And on and off through the years, I have had contact with nuclear energy issues, but it hasn't been a focal point for my career. And I decided that in 2000, early 2000s, this is a whole new world of nuclear reality, and people are as ignorant today as they were in 1962. So I thought I should devote myself as an emeritus faculty member to teaching and writing in this area. And I started giving courses at Stevens. And the courses that I was giving on nuclear energy and all other nuclear-related topics were not in the science school, not in the engineering school. They were in the School of Humanities in the program of Science, Technology, and Society. It was a liberal arts course, and it was meant for people who were not scientists, who were not specialists, but who were concerned citizens. And I found that teaching that course was a very satisfying experience. I had good response from students, And after doing it a number of times, I thought, perhaps I should do a book. And I was amazed that I sent a letter to Oxford University Press. They had published a similar type of book a number of years ago, and it was out of date. And I pointed this out to Oxford and suggested that they might want to get back in the swing of things on this subject. And I got an immediate positive response, and here we are.
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, you said just a second ago that people are as ignorant as ever about this topic. So maybe we could start with the basics. What do people get wrong about nuclear power? What's the myth or the misinformation you see most commonly today?
Well, when I speak to a layperson and I announce that I've just written a book on nuclear energy, I get a reaction of a screwed up face and a big question mark in their visage, and the words that come out of their mouths are almost always, "What about the waste?"
Right.
And this is one of the biggest myths in society today. People don't know that zero people have died from waste from nuclear reactors. There have been deaths from radiation, from atomic explosions, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. The radioactivity killed lots of people. There are accidents that have occurred with medical isotopes that have killed people. But the waste from nuclear reactors, and this is reactors built all over the world, it hasn't affected anyone's health, and especially not causing a death. And so one of the first things that I tried to discuss is what is nuclear waste, how is it handled, how is it being dealt safely, and what has happened is nuclear waste has become an extremely political issue, and it's the context, the political context, that has affected people's thinking.
Is it true that there now are some newer modular reactors that can use the waste of the larger plants as their fuel and further degrade I guess it would be the half-life of whatever is the result?
You're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that up. They don't exist yet. There's a lot that's happening in the nuclear area. Nuclear reactors were being built rather rapidly in the 70s and 80s. And when the Chernobyl accident happened, everything stopped. There was a hiatus. There were no reactors being built for a long time. And in 2000, there was a group that organized at the U.S. Department of Education to consider what might be done to restart the nuclear programs, which had come to a halt. And they called together a group of representatives from 9 countries. Soon after that, there were another 6 countries that engaged in the discussion. So they had about 15 countries represented, and over 100 scientists, and they sat down in 2001 to think of what can we do to create safe nuclear reactors that would be welcome in society and serve a good purpose. And they organized something called the Generation 4 International Forum. And the Generation 4 International Forum has now been operative for 26 years, and it's still going. And it came up with a menu of Generation 4 desirable reactors. And what you described is a reactor that can burn waste is one of them. And these reactors are coming to fruition today. There are a few that are in operation in Russia and China, not in the United States yet, but we're moving along. And the program that was laid out in 2000 was a 30-year program, and it looks like 2030 is going to be a year when we see results. And this is a story not just about nuclear issues, but about technology and about development and industrialization. I don't know of any example of a 30-year plan that moved along on schedule and has such a good result as its endpoint.
So I want to get into the potential here because there's a lot of good things to talk about. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Chernobyl. Because if I had to guess, I'd say this is probably the one event that colors people's understanding of this topic. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that that facility was poorly constructed and poorly operated. And so the disaster there says more about the state of the Soviet Union at the time than it does about nuclear energy. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're exactly correct. It has almost nothing to do with nuclear energy, and it has a lot to do with, I would say, corruption. Excuse me. And dishonesty in the Soviet Union. I'm associated with the Federation of American Scientists, and that's a group that organized way back at the beginning of the nuclear era to provide advice to the government and to be objective and to be responsible and not to be polemical, but they've provided advisors to the president and the White House and to various agencies. And I became active with that group. And a number of years ago, I asked the president of the Federation of American Scientists, what's the story on Chernobyl? How many people died from Chernobyl? What was the cause of Chernobyl? And he responded to me with the following words. He said, that's a very good question. There's tremendous controversy. We're trying to figure it out. Why don't you devote yourself to that study? So I wound up spending 2 years working on the issues of Chernobyl, and I wound up giving a talk in Washington, D.C. on the 30th anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster, which occurred in 1986. So this was around 2006. The talk that I gave was titled The 15 Dysfunctional Decisions of Chernobyl. And there was lying, there was misrepresentation. There were just one terrible thing after another. One of the most terrible things was they did not build a containment cover on Chernobyl. So when it blew up, it spread radiation throughout throughout Europe for sure. The explosion itself, another point of misinformation is that people think nuclear bombs, Hiroshima explosions. Hiroshima was not a nuclear explosion. What exploded was the most dangerous part of nuclear reactors, which is water. The explosion at Chernobyl was a steam explosion. The water is used as a coolant, and it overheated, caused steam. The reactor blew up, and radiation went throughout Europe. One of the things I learned was that there were sheep that were affected in Scotland. There were reindeer that were affected in Norway. And there were many analyses done of this impact of the Chernobyl explosion. And there were all kinds of numbers that came out as to how many deaths there were from Chernobyl, which ranged from 50 that came from government sources that wanted to minimize it, to 200,000, which came from Greenpeace that wanted to maximize it. But there was a scientist with a substantial nuclear analysis organization who did a very careful study, and there were a couple of other studies that came to pretty much the same conclusion, that there were probably about 30,000 deaths that came as a result of Chernobyl, plus or minus 10,000, because you can't be exact. So it's something between 20 and 40,000. So the Chernobyl disaster was truly horrific, and the Russians tried to cover up. The key point in the Chernobyl disaster is that when they were building the reactor, the powers that be announced that they would give bonuses if the reactor were built on time. So the people who were building the reactor announced that they were completed. And what did they leave out? They left out an important safety system.
Right.
So the reactor started without this safety system. A limited number of people knew about it, and they decided, well, we'll fix this on the QT. And they didn't get around to fixing it until it was operating for a couple of years, at which point it had accumulated a tremendous amount of radioactive material. And they decided to repair what they had neglected, with a small team of people who worked in private, and the schedule for it got screwed up because the region in which the reactor was located declared that they were doing tests on that day, which these delinquent folks didn't anticipate. And so all of the reactors had to lower their output on that day, and they weren't able to do the repair work until the evening. when power could come up. But because of secrecy in the Soviet Union, they didn't know a lot of fundamentals about how nuclear reactors operated, and they didn't know that you can turn them down and turn them on quickly. And they tried to implement this initiation of a safety system in improper conditions. When they tried to turn the reactor up, it didn't go up, so they removed all of the control rods. And they essentially gave themselves a hot foot, and the thing blew up. And after this took place, they first tried to keep it a secret. He had this radiation going all over Europe, and they stupidly thought that they could keep that secret. Well, people in Scandinavia started to observe radioactive material that was in the atmosphere that shouldn't have been in the atmosphere. Right. And so they had to confess that they had perpetrated this event. But they had a long delay time, and there was radioactive material coming down, and there was the May Day celebration that was operative in Kiev. And there were thousands of people out in Kiev experiencing radioactive fallout because the Russians were keeping this secret. And so there was just one mistake after another, and there was an international commission that wanted to understand what had happened. So they sent the chief engineer who had overseen the reaction to the problem. They sent him to an international conference in Vienna, and they sent him with instructions to lie. And he gave a false report to the world about what had happened in Chernobyl. And when he came back, after a while, he was overcome with guilt and decided that he needed to write the true story of what had happened in Chernobyl. And he wrote one chapter of that true story. And after it became known that he was doing this writing, he was found hanging by his neck in the courtyard of his building.
Yeah, I was going to ask whether when he got thrown out of a window or just straight up executed.
He was executed. It was made to look as if he had committed suicide. But the knot that was used to tie the noose was a professional knot that he could not have managed himself. So, I mean, I could go on all night talking about Chernobyl, but those are key features about Chernobyl that people don't know. And what is also not understood is that the other accidents of 3 Mile Island and Fukushima resulted in no deaths. Fukushima was also not a nuclear explosion. There have been no nuclear explosions except in the weapons programs. At Fukushima, there were 3 reactors. They all overheated because the tsunami had put the cooling systems out of whack, and the water overheated the 3 reactors, and the water, which you all know, is H2O. it oxidized the fuel rods. So the O from the water combined with the fuel rod metal, and it released the H, the oxygen, which went off as a gas in each of the three reactors, and the hydrogen is explosive. And so
These were all basically, what you're saying is all three of these events were basically steam explosions related
yes,
to the coolant systems.
see, there were water explosions, and the one of the basic tenets of the Generation 4 designs is don't use water.
Let me ask you this. Given current events, energy has moved way up on the list of our global interests. They've actually probably beaten out the Epstein file, at least temporarily. And you mentioned that China and Russia were building reactors. So what I'm interested in is how vital do you think it is that for energy independence over the next 50, 60 years that a larger portion of our energy comes from nuclear sources?
I think it's inevitable that a very large fraction of energy will be from nuclear sources. And one of the things that's happening today is I have to take, I'm not wearing a hat, but I take my hat off. It's the one situation where I take my hat off to Mr. Trump. He's promoting nuclear energy. And right now, China is way in the lead in the world in developing nuclear reactors. And Russia is right up there with China. So that from a purely economic point of view, if we don't want to be finding ourselves dependent on China and Russia to buy nuclear reactors, the United States has to do a lot more, and it's moving in that direction. There are new designs that are in progress in the United States. When I say that you shouldn't use water, there are 4 coolants which are being actively pursued worldwide as part of Generation 4. One that is an important initiative in the United States is a reactor that's cooled with liquid sodium, and that's being promoted by Bill Gates. And he just a couple of weeks ago received a license to build. He has a contract in Wyoming and is building a small-sized reactor cooled by sodium that can be inserted where there has been a coal-powered plant. And his hope is to have this operational in the next couple of years, and to have this as a model for replacing coal plants. There are 200 coal plants in the United States, and the coal plant includes the heater, which is coal-driven, a generator which turns steam into electricity, and the electrical connections. His dream is to have a nuclear reactor that can replace the coal burner that creates the steam. You can't do that with solar. Solar requires a lot of space and a lot of construction. But the possibility exists is to have a modular replacement and to have reactors that can be built in factories and produced economically. And this is a major U.S. Initiative as part of the Generation 4 program. The other coolants are liquid salts, molten salts, and there's a molten salt project in place now in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, receiving government funding. Gates is receiving government funding. These are two major U.S. Initiatives. In Russia, they have already constructed reactors that are cooled with liquid lead. Liquid lead sounds awful. It sounds counterintuitive. I used to make lead soldiers in the kitchen before my mother found out that it was carcinogenic. But liquid lead is actually highly desirable because lead is quite inert chemically. And so it's not dangerous as sodium is. Sodium, if it comes in, liquid sodium, if it comes in contact with water, can cause fires that can be dangerous. But Gates is confident that they can do this safely. And the fourth coolant is my favorite, which is a gas-cooled high-temperature reactor that's cooled with helium gas. And that reactor can reach high temperatures. It can reach 1,000 degrees centigrade. And China, a couple of years ago, built the first helium-cooled reactor, and that possibility of high temperature is extremely important because reactors and other power sources that use fossil fuel or use solar cannot reach 1,000 degrees. But the petrochemical industry, which accounts for 11% of carbon emissions, depends on high temperature processing, and the Chinese have just broken ground to build a large helium-cooled reactor adjacent to a major petrochemical industrial site in China. And that will come to fruition in a few years and will be a model for eliminating the carbon pollution that comes from the entire petrochemical industry, which cannot be ameliorated without the use of nuclear. And then that opens the door to be able to replace the direct heat that's used in steel processing and aluminum processing. They use blast furnaces and electric generated high temperature furnaces that go up to 1,500 degrees centigrade. Well, you could do that with hydrogen fuel, and hydrogen is expensive and difficult to produce. But if you have a reactor that goes up to 1,000 degrees, you can manufacture hydrogen that can be then used to replace the carbon-producing materials and chemicals that are used in steel processing and aluminum processing. which together another 14% of carbon emissions contributing to global warming.
This is really cool. I'm excited to hear these developments. As we wrap up here, maybe just make the case, like just summarize the case. So from my understanding, we're talking about carbon-free energy. We're talking about safe technology for all the reasons you've outlined. It can be produced inexpensively, provided it's, you have reasonable regulations and these sorts of things. This strikes me as a no-brainer, right? This strikes me as the way forward. Would you agree with that?
I can't understand why there's such resistance to nuclear, but I attribute a lot of the reluctance to a pet of mine named Godzilla. When there were nuclear explosions taking place in the Pacific testing, the United States made a mistake, and there was an explosion which was far more devastating, far larger than they anticipated, and it caused fallout on a Japanese fishing boat, and it caused the death and radiation illness to all of the fishermen. And that became a very big issue in Japan. And what arose from that was the story of Godzilla, which is a monster that was arose from under the sea due to radiation. And there have been 42 Godzilla movies done, most of them in Japan, but there have been 6 in the United States. Last year, a Godzilla movie got an Academy Award for the special effects. So that the psyche of people has been very much affected by the thoughts of radiation, and it's a big impediment. So there's a lot more information that's needed. There's a lot more education, and people, frankly, they need to read my book.
Well,
but that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And I bent over backwards in writing the book, not to be polemical. I believe that solar and wind might account for 50% of the reduction of carbon emissions, but the other 50% are almost necessarily going to come from nuclear, and the need for ameliorating carbon is growing with the AI demand for energy, which is enormous. I'm a physicist. I have a degree, an honorary degree in mathematics, but I frankly don't understand why AI needs all this energy, but it does. And then you have growth that's taking place in the economies of the world, and you have Africa, which over the next 50 years is going to grow enormously in terms of its productivity, its manufacturing, and its need for energy. So the energy needs are way underestimated, and there's no escaping the fact that nuclear is going to be at the heart of the solution.
Well, once again, the book's called Nuclear Energy Boom, Bust, and Emerging Renaissance. I'm just starting it, but it's really good so far, so I encourage everyone to read it. You can get it from Oxford University Press, or you can get it from Amazon, whichever you prefer, so go check that out. You have a Substack as well called Nuclear Tomorrow. Do you want to point people there as well?
Yes. One of my problems in writing the book was to stop writing. I couldn't bring myself to stop writing because there were new things happening all the time.
Right.
And so I learned about Substacks, which I had never heard about before. And a friend helped me establish a Substack. So the day I turned in the manuscript to Oxford, I started writing a Substack, which is for the same audience, a general audience. And what it does is every month summarizes about 15 significant developments that have happened during that month. And what I try to do is summarize the news stories and provide a link to those news stories so that every month there's 15 items that are communicated and made available. The Substack is called Nuclear Tomorrow. And if you do a search on Nuclear Tomorrow, you'll find it right away.
Very good. Go check out the
Well,
Substack.
it seems that you found a lot of things to do after your emeritus
There
retire.
are too many things.
All right. Well, go check out the book. Go check out the Substack. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation.
My pleasure. Happy to talk with you.
Very good. All right. Well, follow us on social media. It's at ACSH.org. I'm at Cam J. English on X, and the website is ACSH.org. Go check out the website, click the subscribe tab, punch in your email address. We'll send you all of the articles and podcasts we do, including this one. And then thank you as always. We will see you next time. Have a great week.